Hey there, English learner. Welcome back to the English Talk community. I'm so glad you're here with me today because I know exactly what brought you to this episode. You've been studying English for a while now, haven't you? You can read pretty well, you understand movies and songs, but there's something that still makes your heart race. That moment when you need to speak English with someone. When you open your mouth and suddenly all those words you know so well just disappear. Your mind goes blank, you stumble over simple words, and afterwards you think of all the perfect things you could have said. I get it. I really do. You're not alone in this struggle, and today we're going to change everything about how you approach English conversations. This episode is called How to Build Confidence in English Conversations and Sound Like You Belong Without Worrying About Every Mistake. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, you'll have a completely new perspective on speaking English. But here's what I need you to do right now. If this topic speaks to your heart, if you've ever felt nervous about speaking English, hit that like button. It tells me you're ready to transform your English confidence. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this community is all about supporting each other through this English journey. Now, let me ask you something. What if I told you that the secret to sounding confident in English has nothing to do with being perfect? What if confidence actually comes from making mistakes and owning them? Stay with me because I'm about to share 3 game-changing strategies that will completely shift how you approach English conversations forever. You know what? Let me start with something that might surprise you. The biggest mistake English learners make isn't grammar errors or pronunciation problems. It's believing that confidence comes from perfection. And I'm going to tell you why this belief is actually holding you back from the fluent conversations you dream about. Think about this for a moment. When you speak your native language, do you always use perfect grammar? Do you never stumble over words or forget what you wanted to say? Of course not. But somehow, when it comes to English, you put this impossible pressure on yourself to be flawless. Here's the truth that nobody talks about. Native English speakers make mistakes all the time. We say and we restart sentences halfway through, we use the wrong word and then laugh about it. But here's the key difference. We don't stop talking because of it. Now I want you to imagine something with me. Picture yourself at a coffee shop, and someone sits next to you and starts a conversation in English. What's the first thing that happens in your mind? I bet it's something like, oh no, what if I say something wrong? What if they notice my accent? What if I can't find the right words? But what if I told you there's a completely different way to approach this situation? What if instead of focusing on what could go wrong, you focused on something else entirely? I'm going to share that secret with you in just a moment. But first, let me tell you about something even more important. The word belong. That's what we're really talking about today, isn't it? You want to feel like you belong in English conversations. You want to sound natural, to feel comfortable, to be yourself when you speak English. And here's what I've discovered after years of helping English learners just like you. Belonging doesn't come from sounding like a native speaker. It comes from connecting with people. And connection happens when you're authentic, when you're present, when you're more focused on the person you're talking to than on the words coming out of your mouth. Let me paint you a picture. There are 2 English learners. Sarah always worries about her grammar and speaks very carefully, choosing each word precisely. She rarely makes mistakes, but her conversations feel stiff and formal. Then there's Maria. Maria makes grammar mistakes, sometimes searches for words, but she laughs when she gets confused. She asks questions when she doesn't understand, and she shows genuine interest in the people she talks to. Who do you think people enjoy talking to more? Who sounds more natural? Who creates better connections? That's right, it's Maria. And the beautiful thing is, you can be like Maria starting today. But there's something I need to address first, and it might be uncomfortable to hear. The reason you don't feel confident in English conversations isn't really about your English level. It's about fear. Fear of judgment, fear of embarrassment, fear of not being good enough. And you know what? That fear is completely normal and human, but it's also something you can work with instead of against. Because here's what I've learned. Confidence in English doesn't come from eliminating fear. It comes from acting despite the fear. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds nice, but how do I actually do that? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore together. I'm going to give you 3 specific strategies that will transform how you approach English conversations. But before I share the first strategy, I need you to understand something fundamental. Your goal is not to sound like a native speaker. Your goal is to communicate effectively and authentically. There's a huge difference between these 2 goals, and once you understand this difference, everything changes. When your goal is to sound native, every conversation becomes a performance. You're constantly monitoring yourself, judging yourself, trying to be someone you're not. But when your goal is authentic communication, conversations become about connection, understanding, and sharing ideas. So, here's my first question for you, and I want you to really think about this. What would change in your English conversations if you stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be understood? What would it feel like to prioritize connection over correction? Keep that thought in your mind, because we're about to dive deep into the first strategy that will help you make this shift. And I promise you, this first strategy alone will change how you feel about speaking English forever. But there's something else I need to tell you first. Something about the power of mistakes and why they might actually be your secret weapon in English conversations. Now let me tell you about the power of mistakes and why they're actually your secret weapon. This might sound crazy, but mistakes in English conversations can actually make you more likable and more memorable. Let me show you exactly what I mean with some real situations you've probably experienced. Picture this scenario. You're at work, and a colleague asks you about your weekend plans. You want to say, I'm going to visit my parents, but instead, you say, I'm going to visit my patents. Your colleague smiles and says, your patents? You mean your parents? You laugh, say, yes, my parents, not my inventions. And suddenly you both have a little moment of connection and humor. What just happened there? Did that mistake ruin the conversation? Not at all. It actually made the interaction more human, more real. Your colleague didn't think, wow, this person's English is terrible. They thought, that's funny. We all make mistakes like that. Here's another example. You're at a restaurant and you want to order chicken, but you accidentally say, I'll have the kitchen, please. The server looks confused for a second. You realize your mistake and laugh, saying, sorry, I meant chicken, not your kitchen. Everyone at your table laughs. The server smiles. And suddenly, what could have been an embarrassing moment becomes a fun memory. This is what I call mistake magic. And it's the first strategy I want to share with you. When you make a mistake in English, instead of feeling embarrassed and shutting down, try this. Acknowledge it with humor, correct yourself briefly, and move on. Don't apologize profusely or explain why you made the mistake. Just laugh it off and continue. But let's talk about something even more practical. What do you do when you can't find the right word? This happens to everyone, even native speakers. Here's a real situation that probably sounds familiar. You're telling someone about your hobby and you want to say photography, but you can't remember the word. Your mind goes blank. Most English learners panic at this moment. They either stop talking completely or they say, I forgot the English word, and give up. But here's what confident speakers do instead. They describe what they mean. You know, I love taking pictures with my camera, capturing beautiful moments. Boom! You've communicated your idea perfectly without needing that specific word. Let me give you another example. You're at a party and someone asks what you do for work. You work in marketing, but you're not sure how to explain your specific role. Instead of struggling with complex job titles, you could say, I help companies tell people about their products, or I work with businesses to find new customers. Simple, clear, and effective. This is the second strategy. When you don't know a specific word, describe the concept instead. Native speakers do this all the time. We say things like, that thing you use to open cans, when we can't remember can opener, or the person who cuts hair instead of hairdresser. Now, let's talk about something that makes many English learners freeze up. Small talk. You know those moments when someone asks, "How was your weekend?" Or, "Nice weather today, isn't it?" Your brain immediately thinks, I need to give an interesting, grammatically perfect answer. But here's the secret about small talk. The goal isn't to impress anyone with your vocabulary or grammar. The goal is to show that you're friendly and approachable. So when someone says, "How's your day going?" you don't need to say, "It has been quite productive and fulfilling thus far." You can simply say, "Pretty good, thanks. How about yours?" Let me show you how this works in practice. Imagine you're waiting for an elevator and someone says, "It's really hot today." Here are two responses. Response 1. Yes, the temperature is quite elevated today and it creates some discomfort. Response 2. Tell me about it. I can't wait to get inside. Which one sounds more natural and friendly? The second one, right? Because it's simple. It shows you understand and it invites connection. You don't need fancy words to sound confident. You need authentic, simple communication. Here's another practical situation. You're in a meeting and someone uses a word you don't understand. Many English learners just nod and pretend they understand, then spend the rest of the meeting confused. But confident speakers do something different. They ask for clarification, and they do it in a way that doesn't stop the flow of conversation. You can say things like, "Sorry, what does that mean exactly?" Or, "Can you explain that a bit more?" Or even, "I'm not familiar with that term." Native speakers ask these questions all the time because we don't know every word either. But here's something really important I want you to understand. The way you handle these moments of uncertainty is what makes you sound confident, not avoiding them completely. When you ask questions naturally, when you clarify things you don't understand, when you engage with the conversation even when it's challenging, that's when you start to sound like you belong. And speaking of belonging, there's something else I need to tell you about body language and tone of voice. Because confidence in English isn't just about the words you choose, it's about how you present yourself when you speak those words. Have you ever noticed that some people just seem naturally confident when they speak English, even when their grammar isn't perfect? There's a reason for that. And it's something you can learn to do too. But first, let me tell you about the third and most powerful strategy. Here's the third and most powerful strategy, and it's going to change everything for you. It's about shifting your focus from yourself to the other person. I know this sounds simple, but stay with me because this is where the real magic happens. Right now, when you're in an English conversation, where is your attention? I bet it's on yourself, isn't it? You're thinking about your pronunciation, your grammar, whether you're using the right tense, if your accent is too strong. You're basically having two conversations at the same time. One with the other person, and one with yourself about how well you're doing. But here's what confident speakers do differently. They focus on the other person. They listen to understand, not to find their next opportunity to speak perfectly. They ask follow-up questions because they're genuinely interested, not because they're trying to buy time to think of better words. Let me show you exactly what this looks like. Imagine someone tells you about their vacation. A self-focused response might be, "Oh, I also went on vacation last month. I visited 3 cities and stayed in beautiful hotels with excellent service." You're sharing information, but you're really focused on presenting yourself well. But a person-focused response sounds like this. "That sounds amazing. What was your favorite part? Did you try any local food?" Notice how this response shows genuine interest and keeps the conversation flowing naturally. When you focus on the other person, something beautiful happens. You forget about being perfect because you're too busy being interested. Your English becomes more natural because you're not monitoring every word. You sound more confident because confidence comes from being present, not from being perfect. Now, let's talk about your body language and tone of voice, because this is where many English learners miss a huge opportunity. You might have great vocabulary and grammar, but if your body language says, "I'm nervous and unsure," that's what people will notice first. Here's something I want you to try. Next time you speak English, stand or sit up straight. Make eye contact when you're talking. Speak a little slower than you think you need to. Smile when it's appropriate. These simple changes will make you sound more confident instantly, even if you make grammar mistakes. I remember working with a student who was terrified of phone calls in English. She had excellent grammar and vocabulary, but every time she had to make a business call, she would speak very fast and very quietly. She thought speaking faster would hide her accent, but it actually made her harder to understand and made her sound nervous. We practiced having her speak slower and with more conviction. Not louder, just more clearly and with confidence in her voice. The difference was incredible. Suddenly, people on the other end of the phone were more patient with her, more helpful, more engaged. Nothing changed about her English level, but everything changed about how she presented herself. This brings me to something really important about accents. You might think your accent makes you sound less confident, but I want to challenge that belief. Your accent is part of who you are, and trying to hide it often makes you sound less natural, not more. Instead of trying to eliminate your accent, focus on clear pronunciation. Speak clearly enough to be understood, but don't try to sound like someone you're not. Some of the most confident English speakers I know have strong accents, but they speak clearly and with conviction. Here's another mindset shift that will transform your conversations. Stop thinking of yourself as just an English learner. You are a multilingual person who happens to be communicating in English. You have knowledge, experiences, and perspectives that are valuable, regardless of what language you're speaking them in. When you approach conversations from this mindset, everything changes. Instead of thinking, "I hope I can express myself well enough," you think, "I have something interesting to share." Instead of, "I hope they're patient with my English," you think, "I'm bringing my unique perspective to this conversation." Let me tell you about something that happens in every single English conversation you'll ever have. And understanding this will remove so much pressure from your shoulders. Every conversation, even between native speakers, has moments of confusion, clarification, and imperfect communication. People interrupt each other. They misunderstand things. They ask, "What did you say?" Or, "Can you repeat that?" This isn't because anyone's English is bad. It's because communication is complex and messy, even in your native language. So when these moments happen in your English conversations, don't panic. Don't think, "Oh no, my English isn't good enough." Think, "This is normal human communication." Repeat yourself if needed. Rephrase if something isn't clear. Ask the other person to speak slower if you need it. Here's something else that will boost your confidence immediately. Before important English conversations, prepare some simple phrases that you can use to keep the conversation flowing. Things like, "That's interesting. Tell me more about that. I see what you mean." Or, "That makes sense." These phrases give you time to think. They show you're engaged, and they keep the conversation moving even when you're not sure what to say next. Native speakers use these phrases constantly, and they're much more valuable than complex vocabulary. But there's one more thing I need to share with you, something about the relationship between confidence and practice. Because here's what I've noticed. Many English learners wait to feel confident before they start having more conversations. But confidence doesn't come before practice. Confidence comes from practice. Every conversation you have in English, even the imperfect ones, especially the imperfect ones, is building your confidence. Every mistake you make and recover from is teaching you that mistakes aren't the end of the world. Every time you successfully communicate an idea, even if it's not perfectly expressed, you're proving to yourself that you can do this. And that leads me to the most important truth about confidence in English conversations. So here's the most important truth about confidence in English conversations. Confidence isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you practice every single day. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, authentic, and focused on connection rather than correction. Remember those 3 strategies we talked about today? First, embrace your mistakes with humor and move on quickly. They're not failures, they're opportunities for connection. Second, when you don't know a word, describe the concept instead. This shows creativity and communication skills, not limitations. And third, focus on the other person instead of monitoring your own performance. This is where real confidence lives. Think back to that coffee shop scenario I mentioned earlier. Now you know that instead of worrying about your accent or grammar, you can focus on being genuinely interested in the person next to you. Instead of fearing mistakes, you can see them as chances to be more human and relatable. And remember what we discovered about belonging? It doesn't come from sounding like a native speaker. It comes from authentic communication and genuine connection. You already have everything you need to belong in English conversations. You just need to shift your focus from perfection to connection. Your homework is simple. This week, have one conversation in English where you focus entirely on the other person. Ask follow-up questions, show genuine interest, and don't worry about being perfect. Notice how different it feels when you're present instead of self-conscious. If this episode helped you see English conversations in a new way, hit that like button right now. Your like tells me that you're ready to build real confidence in English. And make sure you're subscribed because next week, we're diving deep into how to keep conversations going naturally, even when you run out of things to say. Remember, you don't need perfect English to have confident conversations. You just need to be authentically you. Until next time, keep practicing, keep connecting, and keep being amazing.